Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Michelle, for asking me and allowing me to share the word this morning. So, I wanted to do something just a little bit different today. I don't know if you are familiar with a model that is called the Johari window. And what the Johari window is a framework for understanding um, things going on in your life, who you are, what your biases might be, and it helps you to increase your self-awareness of yourself and also to help you understand others. So I do know that sometimes in life, what we think people see is not what they see. And so if we become more and more aware of those things, it can make a big difference. So I am going to share my screen with you and show you the Johari window. And here it is. So the Johari window has 4 windows in it. And in the first one, those are the things that you know about yourself and everybody else knows about you as well. So, so that's your open self. Then the next window is your hidden self. It's the things that you know about yourself, but other people don't know about you. Then you have your blind self, and those are the things information about me that I don't know that other people see. So, it could be that I think I'm a great dancer, and then people are looking at me and saying, she's not that good. So it's what other people see that you may not see. And then there's the unknown self, and it's information that other people don't know about you, you don't know about you. And this is where the Johari window kind of ends. But when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking the things that I don't know and other people don't know, the Lord knows. And he can give us guidance and direction in those areas and lead us down the paths that we need to be aware of. So I'm going to put that back up for a minute. So to give an example of how that would work, I'm going to look at Moses. Okay, so if I'm going to use this window to talk about Moses, I would say his open window was that he was a prince of Egypt. Everybody knew that he was a prince in Egypt. And so when we move into his hidden self, we're going to look at Exodus chapter 2 and verse 10. Well, that's going to show us how everybody knew he was a prince of Egypt. So in verse 10, it says that as the child grew, she, his sister Miriam, brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses because I drew him out of the water. So people know that he's the prince of Egypt. They might not know how he got to be there, but they know that's what he is. So when we're talking about his hidden self, if you look down at verse 11, it says that in those days, Moses had grown up and he went out to his brothers and looked upon their burdens. And so he knows that the origins of where he came from was as a Hebrew, as one of the Israelites. But everybody else doesn't know that. That's something that he knows, his mom knows, probably a few people in the palace know about it, but it's not general knowledge to the population. And so it says that in verse 11 that he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw there was no one around, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So he thinks that that's part of the hidden person that he is. But this is a part of him that's the blind self. So if you go down to verse 13, it says, He went out the second day, and behold, two men of the Hebrews were fighting with each other. And he said to them, who did the wrong? Why are you striking your brother? And verse 14 says, who made you ruler? Oh, they said to him, who made you ruler and judge over us? Do you plan to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? And Moses was afraid and said, surely this thing is known. So when he killed the Egyptian, he thought that was hidden to him. He wasn't aware that other people knew what he had done and what was going on. So it says in verse 15, now when Pharaoh found out about the matter, so it didn't stay secret, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and lived in the land of Midian. So that's where he went. So now it's not known to him what's going to happen in the future. He doesn't know how he's going to live out his life, but the Lord knows and has a plan. So if you look at chapter 3 of Exodus, it says, after Moses had been out in Midian, he had set up his own life. He was doing something completely different. And then Yahweh said to him in verse 7, I have seen, yes, seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their suffering. I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite, the Pezerite, the Hivite and the Jebusite. Verse 9, and now, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. Moreover, I have seen the oppression which the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now come, and I am sending you to Pharaoh, so that you can bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So that was something that was hidden to Moses, and it was something that he hadn't bargained for, and it was something that he really didn't want to do. And if you remember the records, you know, sometimes people joke about Moses that he went back and forth with the Lord saying, I can't do it because I'm not a good speaker. I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that. And the Lord walked him through each one of those steps. But when he left that land, he had no idea that he would be asked to go back there and to lead his people out of Egypt. So that's a small framework of how the Johari window works. So now where am I? Just give me 1 second here. Okay, here we go. So now I want to just take a look at what we can, how we could use this to help ourselves as we grow and we develop with the Lord, and look at some other places as it shows up with other records in the Word. So your open self, it can be easily seen, easily found who you are, what you are, things that everybody knows about you. You could probably sit down and write, 10 things right now that everybody generally knows about you. We can say that David sometimes wears sunglasses, that people know that Ed is a pastor. People know that you can find Michelle every Sunday at noon, almost every Sunday at noon here at the fellowship running that. So we do know as we look around the screen about everyone else that I would venture that everyone on the screen is born again of the Spirit of God, and that we're all filled with the gift of Holy Spirit. So that's something we can take for granted, and that we've received the promise of everlasting life, and that these are parts of our lives that are known to everyone that basically knows us. But our hidden self can be a result of fear or something that we're trying to hide or something that we really don't want to deal with in life. And so we do our best to keep that away from other people. They may be the things that we call our flaws or the things where areas where we think that we're weak. So a great record to look at that kind of hiding and those hiding behaviors occur in the book of Genesis with Laban and with Jacob. So Laban was the father-in-law of Jacob, and if you remember, he wasn't very kind to Jacob. He tricked him into marrying his daughter Rachel, as opposed to marrying his daughter Leah, when he thought he was going to be marrying his daughter Rachel. And so he was forced to work for Laban for 14 years. And during that 14-year period, he brought a lot of wealth to Laban, but he got really tired of Laban becoming a wealthy man off of his labor. So he decided that he was going to pick up his tent, and he was going to head out of camp. He was going to take his family and all his belongings, and he was going to leave. So in the book of Genesis, in chapter 31, we're going to look at part of that record of right after Laban left his father-in-law and what was some of that motivation for him. So in Genesis 31 and in verse 22, it says that Laban was told on the third day that Jacob had fled. So Jacob is gone. He picked up his children, his wives, all of their possessions, all of their servants, and he was making it out of town. And his father-in-law wasn't aware until he had been gone for 3 days. So it says in verse 23, so he took his relatives with him and pursued him. So Laban's chasing him, and he took him a 7-day journey. And when he caught up with him, it was in the hill country of Gilead. Verse 24, but the Lord came to Laban, and the Lord will often come to our aid when we are in a difficult situation. The Lord came to Laban, the Syrian, in a dream that night and said to him, watch yourself that you do not speak to Jacob from good to evil. And Laban overtook Jacob, so he catches up with him, and Jacob was nailed down in his tent in the hill country. So he had set up the place that he was going to be for a while. And Laban, with his relatives, nailed down their tent in the country of Gilead. Verse 26, and Laban said to Jacob, what have you done that you have concealed your plan from me and carried away my daughters like captives taken by the sword? Why did you flee secretly and conceal it from me and not tell me so that I could have sent you away with joy songs, with tambourine and with harp? And Laban here obviously is not telling the truth. He was not going to have a party to celebrate Jacob taking his children and grandchildren away. In verse 28, it says, and you did not allow me to kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. Now you have acted foolishly. It is in the power of my hand to hurt you. But the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, watch yourself, that you do not speak to Jacob from good to evil. Now you went because you longed to be with your father's house. But why have you stolen my gods? So this is something now that is going to be hidden from Jacob. He doesn't understand what has happened. Why would Laban be accusing him of stealing his gods? And in verse 33, Jacob answers Laban and he says, because I was afraid, for I thought perhaps you would take your daughters away from me. So fear can cause you to hold things secret in your life. And Jacob's wife, Rachel, was also holding secrets from him because she had stolen the little idols from her father, and she was hiding them. And Jacob was completely ignorant of that, and it was going to bring them a lot of difficulty later on. But on the flip side of that, sometimes the things that are secret, that we hold secret, can be a good thing. You know, and if you look at the book of Matthew in chapter 6, this is a positive way that you would hold something secret. And in verse 6 of chapter 6, it says, "But when you pray, go into your inner room, and after closing your door, pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father sees what is done in secret, and he will repay you." So there are times that that we can have those things that we hold secret with the Lord, the things that we're trying to do for him and with him, or we're struggling with. And those are some of the things that we do along those lines. In life, one of the things that I know I personally held secret from, especially from my children, was that I had this tremendous fear of dogs. That I used to have dogs that chased me to school almost every day, a German Shepherd and a Doberman. And they were terrifying to me. But because I did not want to instill that fear into my children, I kept that hidden. And the Lord has been very gracious to me, because one day when I was scared by a Chihuahua, I decided that it was too much and that I had to do something and get the Lord to help me to get over that fear, that every dog I saw did not want to attack me. But those are the things that we need to find out about, you know, what are those things that we are keeping secret, and do we have a reason that we want to keep that secret that is a good thing, or is it something that we need to work through? So I want to look at the little section that is on the blind side. And on that blind side, those are things that are unknown to me, information about me that I don't know, but others do. And a great example of that is with Jesus Christ, when he is on the earth, working through with his ministry, and he encounters the Pharisees. At one point, he talks about the blind leading the blind. So we're going to take a look at the record of Jesus Christ with the blind man in John chapter 9. And so in John chapter 9 and verse 1, it says, and as he passed by Jesus, he saw a man blind from his birth. And the disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, that this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" And Jesus answered, "Neither the man sinned nor his parents, but let the works of God be revealed in him." And verse 4 says, "We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one will be able to work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." And when he said this, he spat on the ground, made mud of the spittle, and put the mud in his eyes. And he said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. And so now the word is spread that this blind man can now see. And the Pharisees aren't going to be happy about this for a couple of reasons. Because it's on the Sabbath, and one, because they do not want to see glory and honor going to this man who claims to be the Son of God, or claims to be a prophet, because they're the ones that should know everything that's going on. So they are blinded by anything that doesn't fall in the purview that they're expecting. So in verse 14, it says, "Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees also were asking him how he received his sight." So he's asking the man, "How did you receive your sight?" And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Verse 10. So some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. So they are blind to the fact of who Jesus Christ is because he does not fit into the mold that he wanted, that they think he should fit into. Then it says, but others said, how is a man who is a sinner able to do such signs? And there was a division among them. So here, once again, the only man who ever walked on the face of the earth for his entire life and remained sinless, they're saying, there's something wrong with this man. He is not a sinless man. Verse 17, and it says, so they said again to the blind man, what do you say about him, since he has just opened your eyes? And he said, he is a prophet. So the blind man says to them, he gets it. He gets the picture of who Jesus Christ is. And he says that this man is a prophet. But in verse 18, it goes on, and the Jews did not believe him, that he had been blind and received his sight. So they're even kicking this up another level. Not only did this man not restore your sight to you, but you weren't even blind to begin with. And so it says, now the Jews did not believe about him, that he had been blind and he received his sight, until they called the parents of the one who had received his sight. So then there's another banter that goes on back and forth between them for a few verses where the parents talk about it, and they don't want to get caught in between the Pharisees, and they don't want to get kicked out of the temple, so they allow their fear to take over, and they tell them, you're going to have to talk to my son. I don't know anything, so just keep me out of this. And that was all fear-based. So when we get to verse 26, it says, then they said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? So they're going to keep going on and on with this interrogation because they do not want to believe that the Lord Jesus Christ actually healed this man. Verse 27, the man answered them, I already told you. I already told you and you did not hear. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciples, do you? So now he's going to really kind of tick them off. He's about to lose his ability to go to the synagogue. Verse 28, and they heaped insults on him and said, you are his disciple, but you are his disciple, but we are the disciples of Moses. So once again, you see that blindness keeping them from seeing the truth, that God promised to send a Redeemer. He promised to send a Savior. He promised to send his son, and the son is here. But because I have all these other concepts about how this should look, I can't accept the fact that this man is the Redeemer. And I don't know about you in your life. I know there have been many, many times in my life that I've prayed to the Lord for some deliverance in some area of my life. And it's been my experience that when God answers prayer, he doesn't always answer it the way you think it should look. For me, 9 times out of 10, it's different than I could have imagined, but he got the job done every time in a very beneficial way. So verse 29, it says, we know, these are the Pharisees talking again. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, well, this is an amazing thing that you do not know where he's from, and yet he opened my eyes. Verse 31, we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears them. Since the world began, it was never heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything. When people are in that state of blindness, unless they develop some level of humility, they are never going to be able to hear the truth as it is given to them. It says in verse 36, they answered and said to him, "You were born entirely in sins, and are you teaching us?" And they cast him out. They cast him out of the synagogue. And that is what will happen many times when you speak forth the truth to someone and they do not want to believe it. Then they disparage you, they disparage your character. Verse 35, it says, Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and finding him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he answered and said, "Who is he, Lord? Tell me so that I can believe in him." In verse 37, Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he who is speaking with you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he bowed down before him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see will see, and that those who see will become blind." So, which is really is pretty a harsh statement, because he's saying that they're not going to make it to everlasting life. They think if you think you know so much that you don't have to learn what the Lord is laying out before you, then you will be blind. So before I go a little bit further, just wanted to say that when we work in unison with each other, when we're talking about prayer partners now, but when we work with each other, we sharpen each other. So you can help me see my blind spots. I can help you see your blind spots. And it's, as the Lord says in the word, iron sharpeneth iron. And so some of the things that we perceive about ourselves may not be the way that others perceive us. So I have this, and I just dropped it. I just have this wonderful list of characteristics that can be seen several different ways. And so I'll just go through a few of them. So maybe I see myself as being a very trusting person, and you look at me saying, "Oh, I'm a very, you can trust me." And you may be saying, "Oh, she's really gullible." So there's two sides to that coin. And so we want to figure out ourselves where we actually fit. Sometimes, I might think that I'm optimistic, and you may think that I'm being impractical. So, but it's those conversations that happen that will help you to enhance or develop your character even more. So let me see, maybe just a couple other ones I'll share here. I might think that I'm really orderly. You might think that I'm compulsive. Does she ever stop? Does she ever slow down? And I think I'm putting things in order. And that's how I think it looks to people. Or it could be that maybe I think I'm a curious person, and somebody else perceives that as being nosy. So we have to have relationships with people so we can figure out what side of that coin that we fit on. And so I just love the fact that God says in the word that he puts us in the body where it pleased him. And we can help build each other up, or we can help tear each other down. And so we need that guidance that comes from having a multitude of counselors, so that we can see our blind spots and we can give guidance to others. And I will tell you, as I work with a lot of teachers, and I do a lot of different groups where we've done this exercise sometimes, and people will write down characteristics that they thought someone had. And then eventually it would get back to you, your little sheet of how people saw you. And it will really show up it will show up your blind sides and really be very helpful. I found it to be very positive, because when you think you're just living life, they might be your friends or the people that you work with might be looking at you and saying, "She is such a supportive person." And maybe you didn't see yourself as being a supportive person. Or they may say that you are, they might see you as being very methodical, and you never really thought about yourself that way. Somebody told me once I was really methodical because I was working on a picnic line wrapping hot dogs. And they said, you just figured out how to get this system going. And I just thought I was wrapping hot dogs. But, that is a characteristic that may have carried on in other areas of my life. So it takes being courageous and brave and talking to someone that you trust and maybe somebody that you don't trust to find out what those things are. In Proverbs chapter 11, it says that in verse 14, Proverbs 11:14, it says that without wise guidance, people will fall, but with a multitude of advisors, there is deliverance. God placed us in the one body. He never wanted us to be alone. He never wanted us to function alone. He never wanted us to think alone. So, and I don't know, we were talking about having prayer partners for the month of February. I don't know how many of you are doing that, but it has been very insightful for me. I've started to pray with two people I don't normally pray with, and I'm learning a lot about them. They're learning a lot about me. And some of the things I've seen in them, they've never seen before. And some of the things that they've seen in me, I haven't seen before. So that just strengthens and tightens our bond together as we are workers together with God and the Lord Jesus Christ. And so just want to remember that it takes wisdom to build a house, and it takes wisdom to do the things that the Lord wants us to do. But with wise guidance, you can wage war. And we are in a war. We're in a spiritual battle. So we need to stand together so that we can have that guidance and that comes from having a multitude of advisors. So I want to get into just that little category about the things that are unknown to you and unknown to others. But being the people that we are, with the Spirit of God dwelling in us, we know that the Lord knows what He would like for us in the future. And He's never going to make us do anything, but He'll make a lot of suggestions. And I don't know how many of you have gotten suggestions from the Lord and you say, really? Or as my 7-year-old granddaughter says all the time, seriously? Seriously, Lord, is this something that you want me to do? But he will walk you through those things. And He's already revealed a great deal of secrets to us already. He, in the sacred secrets, He's told us that we are all members of one body, of the same body, and that we are joint heirs with Jesus Christ. And how many of the people in the Old Testament times ever thought that they would be a joint heir with Christ, or that they would have those godly privileges coming to them in the future? That He put us in the body where it pleased Him. That there's not one person in the body that is more important than any other person in the body. God put it where He pleased us. There was I don't know if you're all familiar with Denzel Washington. I just love this story about him because he's this prolific actor, and in his life, he didn't want to be an actor. He wanted to, I think he wanted to go into medicine. And the Lord touched his heart and talked to him and told him He wanted him to be an actor. And in their conversations back and forth with each other, the Lord showed him that as an actor, you will be in places and you will reach people that nobody else will have access to. And so that's why I want you there. That's why I placed you in that place in the body. So figuring out why we are in the places that we're in and why the Lord placed us there, and never thinking for a moment that your position is any lower or any higher than anyone else's. So I learn a lot from the young members of the body, from 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. It's phenomenal to me at times, the wisdom that comes out of their mouths. And I know it's not wisdom that they learned on their own, but it's the Lord that's working in them to will and to do of his good pleasure. So we need to have that level of respect, even for the young child, when they're operating within the Spirit of God. So, so the closing scriptures that I want to use today is how God sometimes reveals things to you that you don't know. That's the way that they're going to play out. And so I'm going to use the record in Daniel chapter 2, where we're looking at Daniel and the king. And the king has had a dream, and he's called all his counselors and all of his seers to explain the dream to him, and they can't do it. So the king makes this wonderful decision: I'm killing you all. You're just all going to die. You can't answer the questions. You're out of here. And so Daniel hears about this, and he doesn't want to die. So he says that he sends a message to the king to, give me a chance. Let me see if I can get the answers for you. And so what he does at that point is that Daniel gets his, I guess you could call it his posse together. He gets Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I want to call him Abednego. My daughter used to call him a billy goat when she was a girl. Shadrach, Meshach, and a billy goat. So, but he's going to get his 3 posse people together, and so in Daniel chapter 2 in verse 18. He says he wants to come and he wants to meet with his people. So in verse 18 it says, so that they could request mercy of God, of the God of heaven, concerning this secret, that Daniel and his companions would not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So verse 19, and the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So when we're in a place where we don't know and nobody else knows, the only person that knew what this dream was the king. And what he had determined was he wasn't going to tell them what the dream was for the interpretation, that they were going to have to tell him what the dream was and then what the interpretation of the dream was also. And so God gave Daniel the answer, and he saved all the seers of the time, at that period of time. He got them all off the hook. But what I want to look at is the prayer that he prayed after that happened. So that starts in verse 20. And so Daniel answered the Lord. He said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and he sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in darkness, and the light dwells in him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might and has made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. So the Lord knows what's ahead of us. I know we have the hope that lives within us. I know we're going to live in a wonderful administration in the age to come. And as much as I like to speculate about what that's going to look like, where we're going to live, what the house is going to look like, what kind of food are we going to eat, don't know those things, but he has given that hope that we can speculate. And one day he will reveal that secret to us as well. And so as we go through our daily lives, we need to fellowship with other believers. If you don't have a prayer partner, at least for the month of February, do that and see some of the miraculous things that God is working and he will bring to you. And then also work with other members of the body of Christ. Stretch out a little bit, so do something that you really don't want to do, which is something that's really hard for me all the time. There are areas that I don't like to delve into, but you know, every time I agree to stretch in that direction, the Lord blesses me mightily. And I know that I'm nobody special, so he does that for everybody else too. So to close out this fellowship, I wanted to close with a song that is named Perfect Wisdom of Our God. He knows what he needs, and he will give us what we need if we just take the time to ask him and be patient and to listen.